Yo, what's going on, guys? Thank you, Growth. It's Friday, TGIF. As you guys can see, we have a very special guest on today. And everyone's going to get a chance to see him 2 more times tomorrow. Chris James! What's going on, baby?
What's going on, my guy? I love this intro. I love it.
Thanks,
I think it's
bro.
pretty neat. That's my first time thoroughly actually seeing it through. It's pretty neat. I love it.
It makes you want to dance.
I did it myself, and my skills. You can tell how simple it is. You're like, oh, Jesse must have done that, but I did the best I could with keeping it simple.
I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was pretty good.
Acronym, right? KISS. Keep it simple. Stupid. Changed my life. But thanks for being on.
Simple's always great.
A super busy bee. We've got a lot going on today. How's everything going? How's the day going? What you got? You got anything planned for the weekend?
Nothing planned yet. Well, it's planned but not planned. It's in talks more so, but nothing too crazy going on. In regards to like we're actually walking on a property literally tomorrow. It's a 4-unit, but we'll see what that look like. You know how I do it. Fire, burn, damaged properties. I don't really like to touch them, but one of the wholesalers don't want me to go with them. But we'll see what that looks like specifically. I can guide them in the right direction, but I know it's something that you and I are not going to touch. So I'm just going to throw it out there.
That's no for me, dog.
Right. Well, what do you got going on this week? Are you going to camping, or did you wrap everything up last week or the week before?
Oh my gosh, dude, we've had snow for like a month, bro. And so my camping endeavors have been gone for like 6 weeks now, 7 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it just went by like that. It literally seems like yesterday. That's when we start is Memorial Day weekend. We start camping on Memorial Day weekend. And there's still snow on the ground, mind you, it's like the last week in May. So we're getting ready to get into June, and there's still like snow on the ground when we go camping. So that's when everybody kind of kicks camping season off up here. And then you run from basically the last week in May. So you got June, July, and August. And then it starts getting, pretty cold in September. I mean, we've had snow as early as September before. So, and it actually snowed 2 weeks ago. So
I'm looking for it. The weather is dipping down. We hit 40s, I think, actually a couple of days ago. We're at 57 ish. We're around the corner. We're right behind you. I promise you, we're right behind you. Last year this time it was actually snowing, but we're so used to it. All 4 seasons in 1 week, so we'll see what happens.
You guys got the wackiest weather, dude. Like I thought Alaska was. I was like, dude, there's no way that anybody else compares to the communistic weather patterns going on up here in Alaska. But you guys have us beat, dude.
Yeah, no, but I definitely gotta get up to Alaska. No ifs ands or buts about it. And I know our family just booked our entire cruise. We're actually going to Dominican Republic, so it won't be Alaska this time. We're gonna
go to Alaska, and then you took a big left turn.
That seems like the weirdest Alaskan cruise I have ever heard of.
That's the Alaskan cruise I want to be on.
Yeah, that for real. You guys, I hate to ruin this for both of you, but it's like 82 here today. You can tell because I have my hat on.
A little chilly down there, isn't it?
A little bit chilly right now. I mean, Jesse, I've got a question for you. If it's snowing in Alaska, doesn't that mean this is the time of the year where you start building igloos to camp in? Because I hear those things are pretty warm.
Dude, we've got igloos during the winter, which is like 9 months, and then we have plastic igloos that people camp in during the summer that are called yurts.
Oh, we've got those. That sounds like a New Mexico thing.
Yeah. It does sound like a New Mexico thing.
Sounds like a New Mexico thing.
Yeah, you do yurts during the summer, and then real igloos during the freaking winter, man. But Chris, we're about to get a little bit. We're gonna go get some sun here in a couple weeks, man.
That is correct. Those who are in Arizona, we're on our way. We are on our way. It's gonna be a pretty neat week. Guys, we're gonna be there. I believe the second week of November. I think it's second or the third week. I can't remember which one it was.
Second week.
Okay. Yep. Second week of November. Go ahead.
I was gonna say the 9th through the 12th or something like that.
I'm going to be there.
I think.
Yeah, we're gonna be there a little bit longer, but there is an event going on during that time frame, and I believe it's James's birthday. Is it
It
the 8th?
is. Yeah,
8th?
yeah, his birthday's the 8th. I called my mom today and was like, "Hey, you want to watch the kids for a weekend?" She's like, "No." No, I don't. Hard pass.
That
Dude, the
is
girl that
yeah.
I dated in 8th grade, her birthday was November 8th.
Cool.
The girl that I dated in 8th grade.
Did you send her
Oh,
flowers?
Alex, you talk about your wife now?
No, I did not date Alex when I was in 8th grade.
I don't know. I can't keep up. No, I'm sorry.
No, I met her my senior year.
Jesse, we heard about your 5th grade girlfriend, your 8th grade girlfriend.
My 8th grade girlfriend is watching this. Happy pre-birthday.
That is hilarious. Pansy, you should definitely come up. You should definitely
Down.
come up. Well, is it down? No, it'd be
It's down.
up.
No, it's
For
down.
for me, it's up. For me, it's up. I'm in New York.
I'm gonna
Chris
get you a
goes
map.
up north and then around the South Pole and then back up.
I was gonna say, is it like a full lap?
Oh, okay. There you go. Well, I live in upstate New York, so there we go. That's probably why.
Still down.
Well, thanks for being here, guys. Hope you guys have had a fantastic week. We've got some pretty awesome things going on. We got our next cohort starting on Wednesday. We've got, since we started advertising, so our how do I say this? We don't just take anybody and everybody. We want to make sure that the people that are going through our cohorts are people that are in alignment with our mindset, our values, our character traits, our integrity, all that kind of stuff, the positivity, the abundance. And when you filter out those people, it really just adds so much value to the, it adds to the user experience. When you go through with an entire cohort that are just kind of, it's kind of like what Pace does, right? Like everybody who's in sub 2, there's a big difference between the free group and the people in sub 2 with the abundance, the mindset, the go giving, all that kind of fun stuff. And so we've got one seat left, and we've got a handful of people that I know Jeff is going to be speaking with today and then going over the weekend as well. So if you guys are interested in joining, like I said, we've got one seat left. Our cohort starts October 25th, which is on Wednesday. It's going to be our last cohort of the year. We've got some really amazing things going on. I'm going to share just a couple things with you guys really quick that kind of help separate us from a lot of other people and programs that I've been in personally. And some of that stuff includes, accountability, daily check-ins, journals. One of my most favorite things about the way that this program is set up is it's literally a fail-proof environment. You literally cannot fail through this class. The only way that you fail is by not taking action. That's the only way you fail. We designate an entire day just to give brand new information. And each week for the next 8 weeks builds on the previous week. So you get new information. And then we all as a class go through and implement that information together. Part of your homework is then to go teach that information to somebody else to make sure that you understand it. Because if you can't explain it to somebody else in a way that they can take that and go do something with it, then you don't know it well enough yourself. And then if that wasn't enough, we have another Zoom. So we got 3 Zooms that week. One introduces the information. One, you implement it. You got homework after every class. And then you have another Zoom to come back and say, hey, just to make sure that I've got all the information I need, I've got a question about X, Y, and Z. And you have that opportunity to come back and make sure that you absolutely know it. You know what to do with it. You know how to implement it, why you're doing it, all that kind of fun stuff before new information is introduced. It's literally a fail-proof program, which is something that I absolutely love. Alex Hormozy said it best: create something that people feel stupid saying no to. And I feel like we've done that. It's literally a fail-proof environment. And it's continuing to go up. So all this to say, we've got one seat left. And because of the amount of value that we are providing, our prices are going to be doubling the next cohort starting after the new year. So I'm pretty excited for it. We got some really awesome things. So if you guys are interested, please reach out to either myself or Carlin or Jeff. Jeff's in here, isn't he? There's
Jeff-
James.
Yeah. You can reach out to James too.
You can reach out to James as well. There he is. There's Jeff. So you can reach out to any of us, get some more information. Really excited. Today, though, you guys can see, we got Mr. James, Mr. Christopher Earl, Topher Earl. we used to call him back in the day. Thanks for being here again, brother. I'm really excited. Today, as you guys can see, today's topic is why you should always assume your coworker speaks Martian. What a concept, Carlin. What do you think of when you hear that?
So I listened to an interview with Grant Cardone's business partner, Kevin Turner. And something he said stood out to me that I have to constantly remind myself when I'm dealing with other people, when I'm dealing with my kids, when I'm dealing with my husband sometimes. That you can't ever say something too many times. For the parents in the group, I'm sure you all thoroughly disagree with me. But that's what I think of when I think of communication and trying to speak to someone that is thinking like a Martian from time to time. Like, okay, I'm just going to say it 1 or 2 or 400 more times and we'll get there.
You know, it's funny because I hear Pace say this all the time. He's like, if I haven't said it 7 times, I haven't said it once.
Yep.
What do you think? Why do you think that is, Chris? Like, what have you learned? I mean, you own multiple businesses. You and I are business partners. You've got a lot of really neat things going on. What are some of the things that you have learned over the years as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, as a CEO, and as an employee before you jumped into all these things? What are some of the big things and takeaways that you have learned in communication and why it's key?
Yeah, I believe more so when it comes to communication, it really all depends who you're speaking to. Everyone learns a little bit differently, right? So sometimes you got to articulate a little bit differently versus someone who it's like someone who's a little bit more experienced versus someone who's just jumping into it. So the communication may vary. Some of the terminology needs to change so you can adapt to how they actually interpret things. It's definitely could be a learning curve, right? Because if you I do it on a daily basis. A lot of training, and a lot of developing going on, and a lot of coaching, right? So specifically during those training and coaching processes, sometimes I may articulate it some way where I think in my head I understand thoroughly, that made sense, but on the opposite end, they don't really understand what I just stated. So I need to articulate a different way, communicate a different way, or break it down in a different version where it makes sense in their head.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So when it comes to more so entrepreneurship, I really think you have to be open as a leader to creating those different versions or creating that different communication piece, because there's not only one way of communicating. There's not only one way of communicating, and a lot of people, that's where people get the downfall. Actually, a lot of relationships or specific business relationships fall apart because maybe the communication wasn't there. And a lot of different, actually, perfect example is more so I was watching myself and Mike Diaz. We're in this course more so like public speaking and also like integrations with sales and all that good stuff, and just seeing people doing an example on stage for like, this is young lady, she's Asian, and then you have this African American, 2 totally different backgrounds, right? So try explain it to an Asian lady who just learned English 3 to 5 years ago, and try to communicate to the African American who has known English all his life. 2 different communication pieces right there.
Yeah.
And if I'm trying to articulate something to the African American, he may or may not understand it, what I just said, versus I talk to the Asian. And guys, just want to preface, I have nothing against any kind of ethnicity or anything like that. I love all people. I just want to preface that. Oh my God, like, just talking about an Asian, but this is literally a legitimate example that more so myself and another sub-2 student we're doing in another course. But communication's everything. I really think it's everything. You have to learn to adapt to your communication. May not work for that individual. You may have to adapt and alter your communication to see how they can perceive it a little bit differently.
Absolutely. Well, you're bringing up like cultural differences, which I think is a big. It's a huge thing, and it's something that absolutely does need to be talked about. I mean, how many people watching this or will be watching this have VAs
That's correct.
Yeah.
or have ever had a VA? I can't tell you one of the big things that Chris and I always harp on when it comes to people. I feel like we talk to a handful of people at least every week that either have a VA or they're hiring a VA, and like they're just not getting quite where they want. And a lot of that stems from you got companies who say that they will train your VA, but they're not really training your VA on the things that matters. They're not communicating like you need to communicate. It's not their business. It's your business.
Right.
You should not be leaving the communication aspect up to somebody else who knows nothing about what it is you're trying to accomplish, who you are, what your community culture is like, or your business culture is like, or anything like that. But so many people are doing it. And then they're like, man, how come I'm not getting the results that I want? How come I don't have the relationships that I want? How come I don't blah, 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 blah. And, I remember talking with somebody and they're like, yeah, well, I've got this company that's training my VA. And me, I've already been through the grinder. I mean, you know my story, Chris. I mean, when I first joined Sub 2, the first thing I did was hire a VA. Not knowing how to train a VA, not knowing what to expect. I hired a company that said, hey, we oversee VAs and we can train your VA. I was like, beam me up, Scotty, even better. Here's the script. Here's your login for your calling platform. Make some calls, man. And it was interesting because after over the course of several months, I mean, I was out $15,000. I was skip tracing it out. I know we're talking about communication for a second, but let me all of this is tied into not having clarity in how to effectively communicate something. I mean, people start wars just off of communication. People can end wars being able to effectively communicate. People make millions and millions and millions of dollars in their business. That's how you grow a business. And that's how you fail a business, is from your ability to freaking communicate. So you would think that most people would be a little more cognizant and intentional with building and developing that skill, learning how humans think, learning about psychology, learning about not only what you're saying, but what you're not saying, your nonverbal cues. I mean, a lot of times that speaks more than anything else, right?
Yeah.
But to go back to the VA thing, I was talking to this individual and he's saying, yeah, I've got this company training my VA and they're doing X, Y, and Z, but I'm not getting the results that I want. And I remember personally, I've been through this and I've listened to a lot of my VA calls where I was going back, and there's a lot of people, especially right now, where you make a phone call and you're either the 10,000th VA that calls this person, so they're pissed off already, or they give you some, response out of the side of their neck that's like, yeah, for the right price, I'd be willing to sell. Well, us being American, you and I, Carlin and Chris, you guys know that when you hear that, you're like, oh, this guy's obviously not motivated to sell. He has no interest in selling. Yeah, for the right price, I would sell. If we were on the phone, we automatically know, hey, John, you know what? Totally get it. Doesn't sound like you need to sell. I'm probably a better plan B. Have a good day. And then you're off that phone in 30 seconds, right? But a VA hears that, oh, yeah, for the right price, I'd be interested in selling. Guess what? The people that say they're training your VAs, they're not teaching them things about sarcasm. They're not teaching them about American culture, because most of the time they're not even American, which is nothing against anybody else. But without being, around that thing, you don't. How do you articulate sarcasm to somebody who knows nothing about what sarcasm is, or different tonality changes, or American culture, or anything like that? So a VA hears, yes, for the right price, I'd be selling, unless you have properly trained and communicated with your VA on those types of scenarios. They're not going to know. All they're going to hear is, oh my gosh, cool. This is what Jesse wanted. He wanted me to get somebody to say yes. This guy said yes, for the right price he would sell. Cool. And guess what? They spend the next 20 minutes, 30 minutes getting information about the seller, getting information about the property, all these other kind of things, the whole time not knowing that person's not even interested in selling. So if you got a VA making 300 or 400 calls a day, and every person they're connecting with is giving some smart ass response like that, if you haven't effectively sat down and taught your VA these things and communicated them, how much time is your VA wasting every single day? I mean, I remember my VA was giving me, I was doing like, Chris, I was doing like 10, I was getting like 10 warm leads a day, dude. And at the time, everybody else, on average, it's usually like 2 to 3. That's like an average day. If your VA is making 300 to 400 calls a day, you should be getting in anywhere between 2 to 3 warm leads a day. I was getting 10. And dude, I thought I was a badass. I thought I was a straight bam. And I was like, dude, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing something right because I'm tripling. I'm 3xing what everybody else is doing. I'm killing the game, dude. Everybody else is getting 2 leads. You got 2 leads today, bro. I got 11. I'm sitting here thinking that I'm doing good. And this is a true story. This is a true story, guys. I've actually got the recording somewhere. But my VA called somebody one time, and I don't remember the address or anything like that, but the VA said, hey, I'm calling about 123 Main Street. And the seller was like, actually, that house isn't for sale, but I have this other one that you might be interested in. It's a big, beautiful house. It's white. It's got pillars. There's a tenant living in there. Now his lease is up in November. And guys, this was 2020. This is July of 2020. He's like, but his lease is up in November. You might want to renew. Not really sure. But he kept my VA on the phone, like telling this big, elaborate story, like 30 minutes. And I get back from work and I'm listening to it, going through my leads and trying to make, follow-up calls. And I come across this one and I see the address. Now, you guys both have heard me share the story with you guys before. For everybody watching or listening, do you know what the address was? The address was 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. For those of you guys who don't know what that is, that's the White House.
Is the White House.
So he's building up this big, it's this big, beautiful house. It's white. It's got pillars. There's a tenant in there. His lease is up. He's talking about Donald Trump. So things like that. That's what I'm getting at. He tied up my VA on one freaking call for like 30 minutes and just being over the top sarcastic with this individual, with my VA. The whole time he doesn't understand this. He doesn't know. He just hears, oh my gosh, cool. Well, John didn't want to sell 123 Main Street, but he's got 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue that he's interested in selling.
I'll buy it.
So, but anyway, all of this to say, like, communication is extremely, extremely important. And I love that, Chris, that you shared that you as a CEO, as a leader, realize the importance of communication, so much so that, I mean, that's what I love about our partnership, is you're constantly engaged in growing all these different skills. And I know Carlin and I, we talk a lot about, we're like Carlin got done saying, like she's constantly reading and listening to, other influential leaders and things like that. And I love that, man. I love that. I think communication is something that's not talked about enough. So from your perspective, Chris, if you assume, this is kind of tongue in cheek, but the principle still applies here. If you were to assume that the people in your charge speak Martian, how would you approach your communication?
The first speak Martian. That's funny. The first thing I would really look at is how well do they interpret things? What's the best course of action there? Mm-hmm. Are they a hands-on individual? Maybe do I have to do a draw out, a whiteboard? Do I have to, show them exactly what I'm trying to articulate? Mm-hmm. Versus know the room, know who I'm speaking to.
Dude, that's big right there. Knowing the room. Can you elaborate a little bit on that? Like, what does that mean? Like knowing the room. Why is that important?
I think that's important more so due to the fact of you got to know if these are 10, 15, 20 year experience individuals you're speaking to, or it's someone who just starting off. Mm-hmm. You have to understand that. You got to understand the crowd. It's also good to take a poll before even having that training session. Who knows about A, B, and C, or who knows about whatever that looks like, and open that door. and then from there you can actually mold the initial training into the direction you want to go to.
Let me ask you, if you were to jump into, let's
We
say,
are Martians. That is funny. I wish I knew who stated that. We are Martians.
if you were to jump into, because me and you, when we met, we were on a board of advisors for each
Right.
other.
That is correct.
Which, for everybody who doesn't know, that's how Chris and I met. We put together a board of advisors, which is, think of it like an accountability group on just freaking steroids, where it's one of those things where it's like, if you don't, Angel, you know this. You know you
out of
need
all
to
people. Out
access.
of all people.
Chris, do you need to say it or do you want me to say
No,
it?
no, it's all you, Carlin, this time.
Hey guys, please go up to the top where the three dots are and grant StreamYard access so we can talk to you.
We have not effectively communicated that to Angel. We have failed. You guys are seeing it right here.
This is a great example.
Perfect
We haven't
example.
said it 70 times. We haven't said it once yet. I love you, Angel. Thank you. That's so funny. But Chris, imagine this for a second. What does that say about somebody if they jump into a Zoom? And the point of it is to be intentional here. I don't think enough people really understand the gravity of that word, intentional. But even if you just jump into a Zoom, you turn your mic and camera off, what are you communicating?
You're not present.
It's not important.
You're not present. This is just buying time. This is just something to do to buy you time into the next Zoom where you're gonna turn your camera off. You're not networking. You're not doing anything. You're not trying to get to know anyone. You're not trying to better yourself. When people have the cameras off in those kind of Zooms, especially when it's very intentional, what are you doing there? What are you really doing there? What are you really trying to accomplish?
100%. 100%. Dude, I can't tell you. That's something that I personally like take notice of. Anytime that we have a Zoom that either you or I are doing, or we got something going on throughout the week, we've got a bunch of people in there. Usually you got about maybe 20% that have their cameras on. And I'm very intentional with making sure that I understand who that I'm networking with, what they're doing, all that kind of fun stuff. And you guys know, like I run a weekly, networking meeting, network to network. So we show you guys how to monetize from the relationships. And these are things that people say that people need to be cognizant of. Now, Chris, you mentioned knowing the room. Here's something that I don't think a lot of people realize. Facebook is one of those things. You have to know the room. You have to read the freaking room, man. To include not only what you post in Facebook groups, knowing that room. Like when people go into other Facebook groups that you and I are part of, it doesn't matter which ones, any of them, and they start posting stuff like that is criticizing, condemning, or complaining about something, dude, I take note of that shit. I take note of that, and I'm like, nope, I won't work with those individuals. There's just a time and place. But I think the fact that you have that's your mindset, that you have to go out of your way, that you have time in your day to post about something negative on social media, I think it just speaks volumes. And I think that's something not a lot of people really understand and consider when it comes to Facebook is kind of knowing your audience. Like you're putting yourself onto a stage in front of countless people. If somebody reaches out to me and they want help with something, or they want access to, they want, me to connect them with a lender or something like that, dude, the first thing that I do is I go scour their Facebook page. Are they just posting a bunch of political shit? Are they posting a bunch of memes? Are they posting a bunch of, whatever? Like, all right, how active are they? Are they spending their time looking at memes so they can share memes? Like, it just says so much about an individual. And I think a lot of people don't realize what they're communicating when they do that. Carlin, what do you think?
I've deleted people off Facebook for that. And it's not to be mean, or it's not that I didn't think they were good people. It's just that, and I know you can snooze things or whatever, but I like positive communication. I like hearing how people take their problems and find the solution for them. So that's, to me, that's something that's really important that I gauge. So if I have someone that's constantly showing up, I'll try and reach out to them. I'll try and find a solution for them. I'll try and walk through and help them. But after a certain point, you can only do so much to help someone shift when they're in such a low, I don't know, I want to say low caliber mindset, but I don't know if that's the appropriate way to like, but when you're constantly posting negative stuff and instead of finding a solution, you're just continuously fueling your own fire, I get sick of it.
Yeah.
And I love what Pansy said here, because I used to be in the same situation. I used to all the time before real estate post negative stuff on the Facebook, Instagram and all that stuff. But in reality, what is that really doing for you?
I get that.
Pansy, I appreciate you being transparent here. That means a lot. And I could definitely resonate. You won't ever see one from me ever again. But when I was in high school and all that stuff, you want to call this person out and this person, it doesn't make sense. It's not going to help you grow. Be the better person.
100%.
Definitely be the better person.
I appreciate you clarifying that, Chris. And just to add on to what you were saying, it's not that I'm not saying like you guys can't have ever posted or anything like that, or that you shouldn't have ever posted or anything like that. We've all grown into who we are. Like we all are at different stages and different mindsets, and we're understanding the world and relationships around us at different capacities and timelines, all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying that anybody who's ever posted should be chastised. I'm saying that is there a track record of that? Right. That's what I'm getting at. Is there a track record with it? Is it something you're consistently doing, or is there improvement? Because that says a lot about an individual.
Well, and it also says a lot about us as individuals too, because it's like you have the opportunity. If you see someone continuously posting something negative and sad and something's going on with them, you have the opportunity to reach out and be like, hey, I noticed that. Is there something that I can help you with? I have some books that I don't know if you like reading. I've sent books to so many people. Like James is like, what is happening to my bank account right now? I should send him a book. I should send him a book on
that is funny.
Financial literacy for your wife. But like you have the opportunity to send them a book and figure out if there's a way to help. And sometimes there's not. I've reached out to countless amounts of people, and I think out of a handful of them, maybe one of them have actually read the book and taken any sort of thing I said with weight. But I mean, it comes back to communication. If you see someone posting something and you see that they're having a hard time and it's something that you resonate with, then that's where your communication skills come in. That's where you can really hone in on that and reach out and be like, hey, yo, what can I do? How can I help? Because that's the whole point of being a go-giver, isn't it?
100%. 100%. You know what? I'll Chris actually called me out on something. Was it a week or two ago? I think now. You guys know me. I've got a military mouth. So
no,
you do.
I don't believe that.
We were on the phone with a mutual friend of mine and Chris's, and I think an F-bomb slipped out of my mouth. And while we were on the phone, Chris texted me, and it was like a quick reminder. And I love that. I love that because there's always room to grow. And like Chris said, it's about knowing your audience. And so I didn't have that context beforehand. And so he gave me that context live while we were on the phone. So I made sure that I could pivot and respect that and, not cross those boundaries and continue making that a fruitful and meaningful relationship. So I think feedback is extremely important, and being able to take that feedback and pivot and grow from it just screams a lot about what it is you're trying to do and who you are. And I love working with those types of individuals personally. Rowan, talk about the types of misunderstandings real quick. Have you ever had anybody misunderstand your words or misconstrue your words or anything like that before?
Dude.
What have you learned from that?
And we're not counting the 7-year-olds, right? Like we're
Not
like
counting the 7-year-olds.
okay on adult levels. Got it. A lot of it. There's so many examples I could use for miscommunications, and oh Lord, for me it's tonality. That's where my issue is when it comes to
That's a good one.
miscommunications, and
That's a good one.
well, it's and especially in marriages, like I work with my spouse, so there's a lot of times where you'll hear my tone go up and then his tone goes up and then my tone goes up and his tone goes up and then I'm irate by that point. and a lot of the times I have to check myself and be like, okay, you need to reel this back in. This is not a fight. This is a statement. Stop it. But when James and I are starting to have communication issues, work, whatever it is, we'll just say, hey, tone. And that's like the mediary. That's like the instant, reset. Is most of my misunderstandings, that's all it stems from.
Mm-hmm.
Like and I hate admitting this, but I'm a very defensive person. So when Seth, you're not funny. That's not funny. When I say tone, I was like, hey, tone. But my defense goes from like 0 to 100 real quick if I feel like I have to put my guard up. And it's something I actually have to work on, but it's the biggest thing that has miscommunication issues with me personally.
Carlin, I love this question. Thank you for asking this, Seth. It's kind of funny, but it's like that is interesting. Like, what tone do you use when you say tone?
I have to correct myself. So I go through this process. It is the worst. Oh, I hate doing this process, but I have to like literally step back. Like you will see me physically step back. My kids think it's hilarious because they're like, "Oh, mom's mad." Like I'll step back, regroup myself, and then I'll just look at James and say, "Hey, your tone." And then he has his step back. He's not quite as literal as I am, so he doesn't actually have to take a step back, but it allows us to like regroup and come back together. Because if we're just escalating, trying to yell over each other to get our point across, there's nothing productive in that situation. And so when I have conversations with like my business partners or people that I might be doing business with, how I hear them, I actually change the tone of their voice in my head to an optimistic tone. Like I have to remind myself that just because I'm hearing it a certain way doesn't mean that's the exact way it has to be interpreted.
I agree. I can agree more. I'm the same way. I can resonate very very well.
It's a cruel world, man. Like,
yeah,
no, that's I'm sorry, Jesse, go ahead.
No, go ahead, brother.
No, I was gonna say more so that's it takes courage to even admit that kind of stuff. And actually reflect in the mirror, see exactly, okay, is it me? Is it, is it him, her? Start with literally looking in the mirror. And I reflect every day, every week, end of the week. Angel knows this best, and also Jesse. Every week I literally take time and see like how can I actually trained a little bit differently, or what can I done to communicate to this individual a little bit different. A lot of people already know on our consoles that we have, we record and we go back and actually review it to say, actually maybe we should articulate it this way versus that way, and that makes you a better person. That really makes you a better person. Like, oh, maybe I shouldn't said that, or maybe I should have communicated this way, or maybe actually I'm going to actually give this gentleman a call back and let him know, like, hey, actually, I'm not for sure if you took it this way, but this is how I meant it. It's just so many different ways people perceive things. Definitely different upbringings, backgrounds. You got to be careful with that kind of stuff, because the little thing could trigger someone and you just don't know. You just never know.
So my first job was working for a immigrant Korean woman. Okay.
You
Their
was a maid?
culture, huh?
You was a maid? What was you doing?
No, I was a
Oh, okay.
waitress, actually. No,
Oh,
I
okay.
was a waitress. So my first
Oh,
job, I
okay.
was a waitress in a Japanese restaurant owned by a Korean woman. Her name is Jennifer, and she is. I will text her and just be like, "Hey, Jen, I love you." But I worked for
Oh.
her for 3.5 years.
Mhm.
It took me about 2.5 years to realize that when she was yelling at me, she wasn't actually yelling at me. She was just correcting my behavior. Like if I carried the plates wrong, she like I don't know the exact terminology of what she was yelling, but it was just kind of like, "Hey, don't do that." But it
Mhm.
goes back to the cultural differences that you guys were talking about earlier. As an American, I hear anger, and
Mhm.
so I'd get defensive. I'd get upset, and I'd be like, "Why is she mad? What did I do?" Anyway, fast forward to about 3.5, 4 years ago, James and I actually lived in Korea, which was crazy because all of the yelling that I heard from my former boss is what I heard in Korea. And so you kind of get this cultural understanding of is they're not no, they're not angry, they're not yelling at me, they're just saying, "Hey, hey, hey, don't do that. Don't do that." And it was just it's just so amazing to understand that everyone has a different tone and a different dialect and a different way of communication, and when you really understand that, it's a lot easier to separate yourself from the emotional side of things and bring the logical side of things into it. So it just made me think of her because it's like, man, she yelled at me so much, and as an adult, I'm like, she probably called me stupid here and there a few times because I couldn't understand it. But
Try living with a Hispanic who that's all they do. They yell.
I live in New Mexico, man.
No, that's they're not yelling. They're just talking. That's all they're doing.
Well,
Yeah.
Chris, I know we got a couple more minutes and then we're gonna wrap up. I know. Did you need to hop off? Yeah.
I do need to hop off. That's correct.
Okay. All right, brother. Well, thank you for being here, man. Thanks for jumping in and contributing and adding
I
value.
appreciate you guys for having me. Definitely
I love you,
appreciate
Chris.
it.
Thanks for being here.
Cool. Well, one thing that I wanted to hammer down on real quick before we part for the weekend was active listening. Like actively listening. Steve Trang. You know who Steve Trang is, don't you?
No, actually, I don't think I
No.
do.
He's
No,
one
I
of
don't.
he's one of Pace's homies.
Yeah, no.
Oh, okay. So he's got a book called Active Listening. Really, really good. If anybody's watching this and they want to kind of something that was written by a real estate investor, wholesaler for real estate investors, wholesalers, it's called Active. I think it's called Active Listening 2.0. But it's a really, really great book for those of you guys who want something from a perspective of a wholesaler and real estate investor on active listening. But I think that there is so much value in that. And it's a big reason why I personally don't like scripts. Because when you have a script, you're not actively listening. Most people, the reason they have trouble with sales is because they're not actively listening. You got another person talking, and the entire time they're just worried about like what's the next thing that they're going to say. So they completely hear all the good stuff. They completely they don't hear all the good stuff. They don't hear the issues, the things that the seller is communicating on why they have to get out of there and what they're trying to do and all this other kind of stuff. Could you imagine, Carlin, going on a let's say you were going on say you weren't married and you were dating. Could you imagine going on a date with somebody and you're probably wondering, what's this guy's family like? What's his, you want to know, is this guy like marriage worthy? That's what's going on in your head. And he's telling you about his day. He's telling you that he went to his mom's house. He went to the gym. He did this and that. And the next word out of your mouth is, Tell me about your family medical history.
I've actually been on a date like that.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine?
Oh, it was the worst. So it wasn't James. It wasn't James.
Spoiler alert.
Just for a big spoiler alert. No. Yeah, no, it was awful. Like exactly like what you said, Jesse. I'm sitting there, we're talking, we're at this Italian restaurant, and I'm sitting there like looking at the menu. I'm like, oh, they have grilled calamari and fried calamari. Wow, do you like calamari? And we're like, I'm trying to like hold this conversation, and he just goes completely off about his music history and all of his music degrees. And I'm just sitting there, I'm like,
So are we ordering the calamari?
so no calamari, period? Or like, it was so awkward. And
I could
needless
imagine.
to say, active listening, one of the most important skills.
So what was the big takeaway from that?
Oh my gosh. I've got creative language for that date.
So did you set up like disqualifiers for like, all right, this person has to be able to effectively communicate before I go on the next date with this individual?
Actually, yes. Wholeheartedly, yes. So when I met James, for anyone who doesn't know, I actually met James on the internet. We met on Plenty of Fish, and I built a list. Like it wasn't just like, oh, he has to be funny, he has to be nice. Like I had a list of qualifiers for the next guy I went on a date with. And in my life, I made it impossible. At least I thought I made it impossible. I was like, yeah, I'm going to be single forever. There's no way. Like
Now, James
no
is a
more
hell of a
losers.
catch, man.
Dude, he kills me. Like, oh my gosh, what did I win? Like that's like I feel like I dropped a quarter into a crane machine and came out with a golden watch. Like I don't know how I got that. Like, I suck at crane games.
So you had this list,
Legit a list. I had a huge list.
and then what happened when you first met James? Like, what was that like?
I was shocked. If we're gonna get into the romance of this, so he talked to me every single day, without skipping a beat. Every single day he got off work, he would call me and we would talk on the phone. And he wasn't inappropriate, he wasn't vulgar, like he just talked to me.
Yeah.
And he did that for 3 weeks. And then finally I was like, and in that time, I'm gonna add, I made him do the stupidest things. I was like, I don't think you're real. Send me a picture with a spoon on your head and your left pinky up. Like, like all the things. Yeah. And so he actually met me at my grandparents' house. I was like, okay, you have to get the grandma stamp of approval. Like,
naturally.
Have to.
Go right to the grandma, yeah.
Yep. So he drove from Alamogordo to Albuquerque, met me at my grandma's house. We spent the entire night talking. And it goes back to the communication things. He was actively listening. He was engaged. He responded. He didn't ask me about my like guitar experience when I'm asking about calamari. Like there was none of that.
He wasn't telling you about the sweet band that he used to be in?
No. I wish I had heard about that. I could have. I have a whole saved album on my Facebook of you guys' music actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, so he drove up to Los Alamos, my hometown. It's a 4.5-hour drive one way. He did that every single weekend for 6 months.
Gosh. For 6 months, wow.
For 6 months. My parents felt so bad. They're like, why don't you just move in with him? I'm like, this is not what you're supposed to say to me. Like, so, good communication gets you married.
Well, obviously, even just the gesture, right? Like, what does that gesture communicate? You know,
it was just astounding. Like this is not how I was expecting this one to go. The fact that he took the time to call me, the fact that he drove up to see me, when he would be there, the weekends he would come up. I actually worked.
Yep.
I worked at a garden center. I worked about 10 hours a day. So he'd drive up, spend most of his time with our kids. He would come see me for lunch and then go spend time with my family until I got off of work.
Mm-hmm.
So like he was just coming up to see me for a couple hours, and we'd sit at this park bench and just talk. It was great.
Yeah. I had a similar experience as well with James. So
Oh yeah? Did he?
yeah.
Did you make him send the spoon picture?
I said, hey, you got to send me a picture with today's paper. No, he was actually in class with me. We were both in Airman Leadership School together while we were stationed. So asking questions, I would assume there was a lot of asking questions where you guys were communicating, and it was probably mutual. You guys being respectful, all that kind of stuff. Now, as you guys have grown your relationship, and you kind of touched on it a little bit when we were talking about tonality, and you kind of used your partnership and relationship with James as an example to end this thing. In conclusion, here, talk about being open to feedback.
That one's really hard. Like it stems into separating your emotions from logic again, because most people are not receptive to feedback, and when you're in a defensive state of mind, you're not going to be receptive to feedback. Like if your guard is up and you're just trying to, oh well, he's just saying that because it makes me mad, and trust me, we do this rendezvous. You're not going to be receptive to feedback, and that's where taking that step back and being like, okay, this is just a conversation.
Yeah.
Like we just, if we want to move forward, we have to have this conversation. It's a non-negotiable. So do I want to have this conversation fueled by emotion, or do I want to have this conversation fueled by logic?
Mm-hmm.
And being able to, I wouldn't say compartmentalize, but to separate those two things are the difference between making $50,000 or making no dollars. Because if James and I aren't effectively communicating, if you and I aren't effectively communicating, if you and Chris aren't effectively communicating, first of all, that's a partnership and a relationship down the drain, and none of us want that. And that's
Mm-hmm.
also our business down the drain, and none of us definitely want that. So
Right.
you have to be able to separate the logic and the emotion, and recognizing that the tone that you're hearing things might not be the tone that they're trying to project is kind of where that line needs to be drawn.
I love that, and it goes back to asking questions,
Mm-hmm. So
being able to communicate that. I know so many people, including myself. That's such an important thing where it's easy to just kind of make assumptions, be like, oh well, I'm kind of surprised that they would say this, or that they said it like this, or anything like that. And it's easy to kind of compartmentalize it and put yourself in a position where you get back into that scarcity mindset, so to speak. And when you bring that to the forefront of the individual that communicated that, more often than not, they're like, oh my gosh, no, dude, I didn't even mean that. No, not at all.
yep.
And I'll give you a specific example. I remember Chris called me one day, and I don't remember what it was. Like I get like my energy level goes down when I don't go to the gym that day. Like, just because between if my wife gets stuck at the hospital late, and then my kids have to be to school, and life just happens, meetings happens, all that kind of stuff, and I'm not able to get to the gym. Like, my energy level is just low. And
Yep.
it affects my entire day. It's the first thing I do when I wake up is I go right to the gym. And I didn't go to the gym one day. And so my energy level was kind of low. And so Chris called me. It was the first time we talked that day. And we were talking, I think, about a deal or something like that. But just my tonality was it was dull, which it never is. And so he took that as like, I didn't want to necessarily, maybe I didn't want to move on that deal, or wasn't interested in this deal, or, whatever. And so we went the rest of the day, and then he communicated back to me. He's like, hey, I just want to make sure this is the vibe that I'm getting from you. This is based on our conversation earlier and yada, 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 yada. And I was like, oh my gosh, dude, thank you for letting me. I had no idea. No, bro, let's go, dude. Let's go. No, I definitely want that deal. And then I explained to him like what happened and why it's just kind of one of those days. Just kind of one of those days. Just life happens, kind of kicks you in the teeth, and without even realizing it, you can inadvertently be communicating things that you don't even realize. And so it's important if you're receiving things to make sure that you're validating whether or not what you're receiving is indeed accurate.
I think in asking the right questions. So if I have to explain something to someone, one thing I've figured out is, does this make sense, or do you understand this? Do I need to rephrase this? Because I have no problem rephrasing things. I'll find a million different metaphors till it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a highly undervalued question. Like, hey, yada, 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 step 1, 2, and 3. Is that clear? Does it make sense? Do you have any questions about this? And I personally feel like those questions alone prevent so much confusion and so much stress. Like like a great example was just yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Like with the team chat, everyone's communicating. I think everyone's a little bit confused, and it just got to the point where like, hey, can we all just hop on a Zoom? And by the end of that call, everyone was laughing, everyone was on the same page, there was no confusion, it was crystal clear. And it goes back to what Chris was saying earlier, is it might just need a different form of communication. Texting wasn't working. Let's hop on a call. Let's figure this out.
Yes.
Okay, if that doesn't work, I'll go get a whiteboard. I'll draw you a picture. Let me know what you need. You have to tell me what you need. Like
100%. Yeah, all this to say, it's so, I can't even, just as somebody who spent a stint of their life in the military being a professional communicator, and then being able to take that skill and correlate it into my real estate business and in our coaching program, and just to be able to see the impact that it has and the things that can happen as a byproduct of just being very cognizant and intentional with that skill is truly amazing. And so it's my hope and my wish that everybody watching this now and everybody that will be watching and listening to this in the future, that you really take this to heart. If there's one thing, I would challenge you, if there's one thing that you do next week, figure out one thing that you can do to be a better communicator. And not just in terms of what kind of content can I, or what kind of knowledge or education can I absorb or attain. How can you implement that? What are you going to do? I talked with one of the other sub 2 coaches this morning, Creighton Bertrand, amazing individual. And by the way, real quick, Creighton is looking to add to his team. He's got 2 positions open. So if there's anybody watching this, I don't know why that happened. It doesn't come on Zoom too. This is crazy. Maybe it's Creighton. I don't know. But
yeah, Creighton.
If there's anybody that's interested, side segue, if there's anybody that's interested in joining his growing team, please let me know. I'd love to make that connection for you guys. But he was oh man, I forgot what I was talking about now. Creighton, what were you talking about?
Communication, different ways to effectively communicate, adding value to the way you communicate, making a change in communication. Nope.
Man, he said something to me. Gosh dang it. I'm going to have to go make it like a reel or something out of it now, because it was a good thought. Anyway, I forgot where I was going with that. But anyway, we were talking about communication this morning. He shed some light that was extremely valuable, and I thought of it. I never thought of communication in that way before. But I'll shoot it out. It was really good though.
Perfect.
But anyway, appreciate you guys for being here. Thank you.
Rocio actually had a question. I can't highlight it. There we go. What about when you get tired of trying to communicate with someone? I feel like there's different levels to that. Because there's like I'm in a bad relationship, it's been 2 years, nothing's getting accomplished sort of deal, and then that's when you kind of part ways, or maybe you're trying to communicate something in a partnership and you can't accurately communicate it. Um, I think a lot of it is just taking a step back and giving yourself a couple minutes or a couple hours or maybe a couple days of a break before trying to reapproach that situation. If you have good partners, if I'm trying to figure out a good way to articulate something, I can call Jesse or I can talk to James or my integrator James or Jeff and bounce a couple ideas off of them and see if maybe it's the way I'm communicating and nobody understands it, or maybe it's the way that person needs to be communicated with, and then other people can kind of give me an idea of what a good way to communicate that thing is. So
Yeah, I would love to have a little more context to this question. I think there's just so many different ways that you can answer. What about when you get tired of trying to communicate with someone? I don't know if that's like a personal or business or circumstantial, or maybe has that been effectively communicated that you're tired of communicating with them and the way that you're communicating is not working, and so we've got to switch something up. And so yeah, I that's really interesting. There's quite a few ways that
personal.
Gotcha.
If you want to send me a message privately, we can talk about this later as well.
Absolutely. Well, any parting words before we start the weekend?
Parting words, we are looking to hire for our team personally as well. So I believe we have 3 positions left that we need to fill. Jesse, I think, is going to be talking to 2 other individuals is the plan. But if you're looking at joining a team, we are looking for appointment setters and 1 closer.
Somebody who can help us qualify people who would be interested in joining. Yep.
So
thank you.
that's all I've got. But thank you guys so much for Pansy. You should be getting a message soon. But thank you so much for listening in, guys. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, guys. I love you guys. If you guys need anything, please feel free to reach out. Happy to help any way we can. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Friday. TGIF.